Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel, Sola Stories. I am 68 years old, and my son wanted to send me to a nursing home. After overhearing a phone call in the middle of the night, I sold the house overnight and left them homeless. To all my dear viewers, in my later years, all I hoped for was to enjoy a peaceful life with my children and grandchildren. However, the irony is that life did not grant me this gift. In my very own home, my son and daughter-in-law schemed to drive me out. But perhaps they forgot that this house belongs to me. So, what did I do to teach them the most painful lesson of their lives? Can the bond between a mother and son be repaired? Or will this be the end of decades of kinship? Please, sit back and listen to the story I am about to share, and don't forget to leave your advice for me in the comments below, so we can all discuss it together. I am 68 years old this year. At an age people often say is for enjoying a comfortable retirement, surrounded by children and grandchildren. But that was not my reality. I, Carol, a retired old teacher, lived my days like an unpaid maid in the very house my husband and I had worked our entire lives to buy. The alarm clock never had a chance to ring twice. At 5 in the morning, while the entire city of Chicago was still wrapped in a dim, hazy fog, I was already quietly out of bed. I didn't dare turn on the hallway light, relying only on the faint glow from the streetlights outside to find my way down to the familiar kitchen. As 2 pots of oatmeal were bubbling on the stove, I turned to deal with the mountain of dirty laundry in the basket. Daniel's clothes were fine, but Jessica's had to be washed separately by hand. They were all expensive brand-name items, and she never tired of reminding me, "Mom, remember to be gentle. The washing machine will ruin the fabric fibers." At precisely 7 o'clock, when everything was ready and the dining table was set, the 2 bedroom doors on the second floor finally opened one after the other. Daniel came downstairs first, letting out a long yawn and saying lazily, "Morning, Mom." I responded with a smile that had become an instinct. "You're awake, son. Come and eat breakfast while it's hot." He slowly sat down at the table, picked up a bowl of oatmeal, and ate mechanically. His eyes swept over me without a trace of warmth, as if I were just another piece of furniture in the house. Shortly after, Jessica also came down, wearing a sleek satin pajama set. She didn't even greet me, just walked straight to the table and frowned at her bowl of steel-cut oats with berries. "Mom, why are the oats so watery today?" Her voice was drawn out, full of displeasure, "and the berries are mushy. How long did you cook this? Didn't I tell you it needs to simmer for at least 20 minutes? I quickly explained. I let it simmer for a full 20 minutes. Maybe it was the berries I bought today. Was it a problem with the berries or a problem with you? Jessica interrupted, slamming her spoon down on the table with a sharp clank. You always have an excuse. I work a long day. I'm tired enough as it is, and I can't even come home to a decent meal. I lowered my head, my hands clasped tightly together, a bitter lump forming in my throat, unable to say a word. Only then did Daniel speak up, but not to defend me. All right, just make do for now," he said, turning to comfort his wife. "Mom's getting older. Sometimes her memory isn't what it used to be. Don't hold it against her." Then he turned to me, his tone like he was granting a favor. "Mom, just be more careful next time. Jessica works so hard for this family. Don't make her upset." Breakfast ended in silence. Jessica threw her napkin on the table, stood up, and tossed out a cold remark. "The clothes I took off yesterday are in the corner of the room. Mom, remember to wash them. Oh, and..." She paused at the bottom of the stairs, turning back to look at me, her gaze as sharp as a knife. "Isn't today the day you get your Social Security check? When you get the money, give it to me. The cost of living has skyrocketed lately. Utility bills are through the roof. How is Daniel's salary alone supposed to be enough?" I was stunned. My entire Social Security check, the meager retirement I had saved after standing at a lectern for over 30 years, was taken by her under the pretext of covering household expenses. She saw it as my rightful obligation, as if I were living in their house for free, even though the deed to this house clearly had the name Carol written on it. My lips moved, trying to form a weak protest, but I wanted to keep a little for myself, just in case. "In case of what?" Jessica scoffed, a sarcastic smile on her face. "Mom, you're at home. If you get sick, my husband and I are here to take care of you. What do you need emergency money for? Or are you trying to hide a secret stash for someone?" Her words were like a bucket of cold water poured over my head. I looked at Daniel, hoping my only son would say something, anything. But he avoided my gaze, bowing his head to shovel the last bite of oatmeal into his mouth before standing up. "Mom, it's right for Jessica to manage it," he said, looking back as he went upstairs. "She's better at managing finances than you are. You just relax and don't worry about it." The bedroom door upstairs slammed shut, leaving me alone, standing forlornly by the cold dining table. Tears streamed down my face, and I couldn't stop them. I looked around the room. Every brick, every piece of furniture, had been hand-picked and arranged by me and my late husband. This was my home, the place where I raised Daniel, the place that held the most beautiful memories of my life. But now, I felt like a stranger. An invisible wall, cold and solid, stood between me and my son and daughter-in-law. They lived their lives on one side of that wall, while I was pushed to the other, a silent shadow whose only purpose was to serve and to give. The argument that day was the first time in my nearly 70 years that I had ever raised my voice at my son. It erupted without warning, after dinner one evening when Jessica was out, leaving just Daniel and me. My son sat across from me, looking like he had something to say but couldn't get it out. He fidgeted, and it took him a long while to string together a complete sentence. "Mom," his voice was hesitant, "Jessica and I have something we want to discuss with you." I put down my teacup, a bad feeling creeping over me. "What is it? Just say it." "Lately, your health hasn't been great. You cough whenever the weather changes, and your back hurts," he started, beating around the bush, his eyes not daring to meet mine. "Jessica and I are both swamped with work, leaving early and coming home late. A lot of the time, we want to take care of you, but we just can't. What if something happened to you while you were home alone? We'd never forgive ourselves." I listened quietly, my heart sinking little by little. I knew these words were just the prelude to a sorrowful symphony. So we looked into it. He finally summoned the courage and said in one breath, "There's a new assisted living facility that opened in the suburbs. The conditions are excellent. Mom, the air is fresh. They have doctors and nurses on duty 24 hours a day, and there are plenty of other seniors for company. It's lively. If you move there, we can work without worrying, and you'll get much better care. We'll come visit you every weekend." Every word he spoke was like a cold stone hitting my chest. Assisted living. The words were so foreign, so jarring. I had spent my entire life in this house, caring for my husband, raising him. I never imagined that one day my most beloved son would want to send me away in my old age, to spend the rest of my life in a strange place with a group of strangers. "You mean you want to kick me out?" My voice trembled, not with anger, but with heartbreak. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Daniel quickly waved his hands, a look of grievance on his face. "How could I kick you out? This is all for your own good. Look, you're all alone and lonely here. We're at work all day and barely get to talk to you. Over there, you'll have people to look after your meals, manage your medication, and friends to chat with. Isn't that better?" "Better?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Better means I have to leave my own home? Better means I won't see my son or grandchildren every day? Daniel, you tell me, is this your idea or your wife's idea?" Hit a nerve, his face turned bright red and he stammered, It was our idea. Jessica is also very worried about your health. She's worried about my health, or she finds me an eyesore and wants to kick me out to have some peace and quiet." The anger I had suppressed for so long finally erupted. "I live in this house. I don't sponge off of you. I can still take care of myself. I cook, I do the laundry, I clean. What would this house become without me? Now you think I'm old, in the way, and you want to throw me out, is that it?" "Mom, how can you say that about Jessica?" Daniel raised his voice too. "You have no idea how much she does for this family. You're old, and your thinking is stubborn. Times are different now. It's common for seniors to go to assisted living. They go there to enjoy their lives." "Enjoy my life? This is a kind of enjoyment I don't want." I slammed my hand on the table, splashing tea from the cups. "As long as I have a breath left in me, I am not going anywhere. This is my house. It's where your father's memory lives. You two can leave if you want, but don't even think about kicking me out." The fight ended with Daniel stomping angrily upstairs and slamming his door, plunging the entire house into a dreadful silence. For the next week, the atmosphere in the house was heavier than lead. We passed each other like strangers, and the only sound at the dinner table was the clinking of silverware. Jessica was even worse. Her face was as cold as ice, and she would glance at me out of the corner of her eye, occasionally letting slip a sarcastic comment. Some people get old, but their tempers are still like a child's. Not a single thought for their children. Daniel, on the other hand, was completely silent. He avoided me, trying not to be in the same room with me for more than 5 minutes. Loneliness and grief gnawed at me day by day. At night, lying alone in my cold room, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Daniel's words echoed in my ears. Was I really too stubborn, too selfish? Looking at myself in the mirror, a head full of white hair, a face full of wrinkles, my back slightly stooped, I really was old. Sometimes I'd forget to add salt while cooking, and my back would ache for days after sweeping the floor. Maybe my son was right. I began to reconsider. Daniel and Jessica were still young. They needed their own space, their own lives. Having an old woman like me in the house was certainly inconvenient in many ways. They wanted to travel, to hang out with friends, but they were worried about leaving me alone. Perhaps my presence had become a burden to them. A mother's love is about sacrifice, about wanting the best for her children. If my leaving would make them happier, more at ease, perhaps I should accept it. This thought slowly grew in my mind. The initial anger and hurt gradually subsided, leaving only a mother's love. I decided I would be the one to reconcile. First thing tomorrow morning, I would talk to Daniel, tell him I'd come around, that I agreed to go to the assisted living facility as long as they could come see me on the weekends. That night, the air was hot and stuffy. Around 2 a.m, I woke up thirsty, my throat so dry it felt like it was on fire. I quietly got out of bed and felt my way to the kitchen in the dark. The house was silent, except for the regular ticking of the wall clock. As I passed my son and daughter-in-law's bedroom on the 2nd floor, I suddenly heard hushed voices coming from the slightly ajar door. Out of curiosity, I stopped and pressed my ear against the cold wooden door. It was Jessica's voice, sickeningly sweet, a complete contrast to the sharp, harsh tone I was used to. "Mom, you can relax. Daniel and I have already found a nice facility in the suburbs. I guarantee it's absolutely peaceful." My heart sank. She was on the phone with her mother. "Oh, her? Mom, don't you worry. Old people are all talk. She's just lonely and stubborn. She won't last long. I told Daniel to give her a few more days to think it over, then we'll try to persuade her nicely again, and she'll agree right away. My mother-in-law will have people waiting on her hand and foot, meals served, medication given on time. She'll be living like a queen." There was a brief silence, probably her mother speaking on the other end. Then Jessica continued, her voice tinged with excitement. "Yes, Mom, you just take your time packing. As soon as I send this old relic away, you can move in with us. It'll be so much fun. You're all alone back home. It's so boring, and there's no one to take care of you. I worry so much. This house is a 3-story brownstone, very spacious. Her room is on the 1st floor. It's airy and convenient. It's perfect for you, Mom. When you come, I'll cook your favorite dishes every day, take you shopping. We'll have so much to talk about." My body went rigid. Every word Jessica spoke was like a sharp, invisible knife stabbing straight into my heart. They didn't just pierce my flesh, they shattered my soul. Just then, I heard Daniel's voice, the voice of the son I had carried for 9 months. "Yeah, Mom, don't worry. The house is spacious. It's perfect for you to come live here. With you here, Jessica will have some company, and I'll be happy too." Boom! A clap of thunder exploded in my ears. The world around me started spinning, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. So this was the truth. All that sweet talk about being worried for my health, about wanting me to have better care, it was all a lie. They weren't worried about me at all. They just needed an excuse, a perfect plan to get rid of me, to take over this house and make room for Jessica's mother to come and enjoy her life. A sharp pain shot through my chest and spread throughout my body, worse than when I gave birth to him, worse than when my husband passed away. This was the pain of betrayal, of deception from my own flesh and blood. I had been deceiving myself, making excuses for their behavior, even preparing to sacrifice my final years. And what did I get in return? A cruel plot, meticulously planned behind my back. If they had just been honest with me and said, "Mom, we want to have my mother-in-law come live with us, is that okay?" Maybe I would have been unhappy, but for my son's sake, I would have agreed. We could have discussed it, lived together, but no, they chose the most despicable way. They chose Jessica's mother and decided to throw me out like a piece of old, unwanted furniture. The chill in the hallway that night was nothing compared to the ice in my heart. The tears had run dry, replaced by something else rising within me. It wasn't wild rage, nor was it desperate sorrow. It was a terrifying calm, a resolve as hard as steel. I quietly turned and walked back to my room, step by soft step, without making a sound. The door to my son's room was still ajar, and inside, their whispers about a happy future without me continued. They wanted this house. They wanted to kick me out to welcome someone else. Fine. Since you want to put on a show, then I, this old woman, will write the ending to this play. An ending you will never forget for the rest of your lives. You want to disappoint me? Fine. I will make you 100 times, 1,000 times more disappointed than I am. After that fateful night, I didn't cry. Not a single tear fell. The pain of being betrayed by my own child was beyond the limit of tears. It solidified into a block of cold, hard ice lodged in my chest. From the moment I turned away from that crack in my son's door, the Carol of yesterday, the weak, forbearing old mother, who always made excuses for her son, was dead. The next morning, I still woke up at 5. I still made a pot of coffee and set out breakfast for Daniel and Jessica. I still hand-washed the pile of delicate clothes. I still cleaned the 3-story house until it was spotless. But one thing had changed completely. Me. I moved like a pre-programmed machine, doing everything with deft hands and precise movements, but my eyes were empty. The strange smile that had been plastered on my face for years was gone, replaced by a terrifying calm. I no longer looked them in the eye when I spoke. My voice became flat, devoid of emotion. At the first breakfast after that night, Jessica began her usual nitpicking. "Mom, why is this fruit salad so sour?" she said with a frown, pushing the bowl away. In the past, I would have immediately apologized, explaining that perhaps I'd used too much lemon juice. But that day, I just glanced at the bowl and said, neither warmly nor coldly, "Then don't eat it." Jessica froze, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if she couldn't believe her ears. She turned to Daniel for support. My son was equally surprised. He said hesitantly, "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Jessica was just offering a suggestion. I put down my fork and looked up, meeting his eyes directly for the first time in days. My gaze was cold, all-seeing. I heard her. Just those 3 words were enough to shut Daniel up. He lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. That meal proceeded in a suffocating silence. They probably sensed something was wrong but couldn't understand what had happened. In the days that followed, my silence became a lethal weapon. I no longer responded to Jessica's accusations, nor did I try to make conversation with Daniel. I moved through the house like a shadow, my presence both tangible and ethereal. I was there, cooking them meals that were more delicious than before, washing their clothes until they were more fragrant than ever, but I created an endless sense of distance. This change initially confused and even frightened them, but it wasn't long before they began to interpret my silence in the way they wanted. One evening, while I was hanging laundry on the back porch, I accidentally overheard their quiet conversation in the living room. "Looks like she's finally accepted it." Jessica's voice was full of triumph. "I told you, old people can't stay stubborn for long. She hasn't said a word these past few days. She probably realized she was wrong and is reflecting on it." Daniel sounded relieved. "I hope so. Mom being so quiet these last few days has been kind of creepy, but she has been much more obedient, no more nagging or talking back to you. I guess she's come to terms with it." "It's about time she did," Jessica huffed. "If she won't think for herself, she should at least think of you. Anyway, let's give her a few more days of peace and quiet to digest it." This weekend, we'll bring up the assisted living facility again, nice and easy. She'll definitely agree this time. My mom has called several times asking when she can move in. Okay, I'll talk to her this weekend. They celebrated in secret, believing that this old bird had finally surrendered, accepting its fate of being locked in a cage. Little did they know, that bird's wings were not broken. It was quietly sharpening its beak and claws, preparing for a fatal strike. In the midst of this silence, while they were basking in their imagined victory, I had already begun to act. I took out an old cell phone I had kept hidden for emergencies from the back of my closet. There were only a few numbers in the contact list, one of which belonged to my former student, Kevin Price. He was now the head of one of Chicago's most prestigious real estate firms. I had taught him in middle school. He was a smart and loyal kid. I waited until noon, making sure Daniel and Jessica were both at their offices, before making the call. I stepped out onto the porch, my voice low, my tone calm and resolute. "Hello, is this Kevin? This is your old teacher, Carol." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a voice full of surprise. "Mrs. Anderson? Oh my gosh, is it really you? I haven't heard from you in so long. How are you doing?" I had no time for pleasantries. "I'm fine, Kevin. I'm calling because I need you to help me with something important. Of course, anything." "What is it?" "I'll do my best." I took a deep breath, looking at the magnolia tree in the yard that my husband had planted with his own hands. "I want to sell my house, the one in Lincoln Park." Kevin was stunned into silence again. "What? Mrs. Anderson, you want to sell the house? But that's your and Mr. Anderson's life's work." "I have my reasons," I interrupted, my tone leaving no room for argument. "And I have a few conditions. You need to listen carefully. First, it must be sold within 1 week. Second, I don't need the highest price, just a reasonable one. Third, and most importantly, the entire transaction must be fast and absolutely confidential. No one can know about this until everything is finalized." The other end of the line was silent. Kevin was probably trying to process my incredible demands. After a long moment, he asked cautiously, "Mrs. Anderson, are you sure? Did something happen?" "You don't need to know the reason." My voice was as cold as ice. "You just need to tell me if you can do it." The determination in my voice convinced him. Yes, I can do it. I'll handle it personally. I'll find a reliable buyer, an all-cash offer, to get things done as quickly as possible. Can I come by your place tomorrow at noon to see the house?" "Yes. Come during the lunch hour. No one will be home." "I understand, Mrs. Anderson." The next day at 12:30 p.m., the doorbell rang right on time. I opened the door to find Kevin standing there in a well-tailored suit, accompanied by a middle-aged man who looked like an investor. My former student looked at me with a mixture of concern and sympathy, but maintained his professional demeanor. "Mrs. Anderson, sorry to disturb you." "It's no problem. Come in," I replied calmly, stepping aside to let them in. They were incredibly swift and efficient. The middle-aged man walked through the house, nodding in satisfaction. About half an hour later, they returned to the living room. The man sat across from me and got straight to the point. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm very pleased with this property. I've been looking for a place to set up a new branch office, and this location is absolutely perfect. I won't haggle. I'll make you an offer, and I'm prepared to pay in full, in cash, upon signing the contract. What do you say?" The price he offered was about 10% below market value, but it was still a massive sum of money. More importantly, it met my need for speed. I didn't need to bargain. "I agree," I answered curtly, without a hint of hesitation. Kevin and the buyer were both a little surprised by my decisiveness. They had probably prepared for a negotiation. "Well, that's wonderful," the man said with a satisfied smile. "If you don't mind, could we go to Mr. Price's office this afternoon to sign the papers? I'd like to get this settled as soon as possible." "Yes. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Things moved even faster than I had imagined. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived at Kevin's office. The contract was ready. I scanned the terms. Every clause was clear and straightforward. Kevin placed a pen in front of me. "Mrs. Anderson, are you "Are you sure about this?" he asked one last time, his voice filled with a kind of apology. I didn't answer, just picked up the pen. The cold metal touched my thin fingers. As the nib touched the paper, scenes from the past flashed through my mind in slow motion. I saw Daniel as a newborn, small and red, sleeping peacefully in my arms. I saw him taking his first wobbly steps on this very living room floor, falling and then grinning. I saw him on his college graduation day, wearing his cap and gown, proudly telling me, "Mom, I'm going to earn a lot of money and take care of you." I also saw Jessica's arrogant face on the day she first visited, and the triumphant look in her eyes whenever Daniel sided with her against me. Two sets of memories, one sweet, one bitter, intertwined and tore at my heart. A flicker of hesitation crossed my mind. Was it worth it? To sever everything over a moment of anger? But then, their whispers from that late night echoed clearly in my ears again. "As soon as I send this old relic away, you can move in with us. It'll be so much fun." The pen in my hand no longer wavered. With a firm and decisive stroke, I signed my name, Carol. Those 5 letters marked the end of a chapter in my life. The house my son had always assumed would be his, the house he was planning to take over, no longer belonged to him. After signing, a huge sum of money was immediately transferred to the bank account I had given Kevin. The buyer shook my hand and thanked me profusely. Kevin walked me to the door, his expression complicated. "Mrs. Anderson, what are your plans now?" "I have my own plans," I said, patting his hand gently. "Thank you for today, Kevin. And please, keep this confidential for a few more days." After leaving the real estate office, I didn't go straight home. I went to another bank, one I had never used before. I requested to have all the money I had just received transferred to a new long-term savings account with a bank headquartered in Savannah, Georgia, a beautiful city over 900 miles away from Chicago. I had planned it all out. Savannah was where my husband and I had spent our honeymoon, and it was where I had always dreamed of returning to spend the rest of my days. When the bank teller confirmed the transaction was successful, I felt an invisible weight lift from my shoulders. Stepping out of the bank, the afternoon sun of Chicago felt unusually warm on my skin. 3 days after the contract was signed, with the money safely deposited in the Savannah bank account, life in the 3-story brownstone continued as usual. I still woke up at 5 in the morning. The sounds of coffee brewing, pans sizzling, and the gentle whir of the washing machine still filled the house. But the atmosphere was different. It was no longer heavy and oppressive. Instead, there was a strange quiet, the kind of quiet you find on the surface of a lake just before a storm. I was that lake, and the storm was perfectly hidden in my depths. Daniel and Jessica, seeing how unusually compliant I had been these past few days, had completely let down their guard. They interpreted my silence as surrender, a sign of accepting my fate. They started to become happier, laughing and chatting at the dinner table. They even discussed plans to renovate the first-floor room right in front of me, as if I were thin air. "What do you think about painting it a cream color to match my mom's furniture?" Jessica said, picking up a piece of fish. "And we can change the curtains to those double-layered sheer ones. It'll look so elegant." "Whatever you decide," Daniel replied, his eyes glued to his phone screen. "As long as you and your mom are happy." I sat there, silently eating my meal, their words flowing into my ears without causing a single ripple in my heart. Go ahead and dream, I thought. Go on and paint your beautiful future in a house that no longer belongs to you. I'll give you a few more days to enjoy that sweet dream. Finally, the day arrived. It was a Tuesday evening. After cleaning up after dinner, I went to my room. I had a small suitcase already packed, the kind you can carry on a plane. Inside were just a few changes of clothes, an old photo album with pictures of my husband and me, and a silk scarf he had given me. That was all. I didn't need anything else from this house. I dragged the suitcase into the middle of the living room. The clicking sound of the wheels on the hardwood floor caught the attention of the couple who were sitting and watching television. "Mom, what are you doing?" Daniel asked blankly, his eyes still on the screen. Jessica, however, quickly glanced at the suitcase, a flash of light in her eyes that was quickly masked by a look of fake concern. "Mom, where are you going?" I stood up straight and looked at them calmly, my voice as flat as if I were reading the weather report. "I called Susan. my old college friend in Savannah. She lives alone and is quite lonely. I thought I'd go visit her, maybe stay for a while to clear my head. The words Savannah and a while acted like a powerful stimulant. I could clearly see the unconcealable ecstasy in their eyes. Daniel sat up straight, fumbling to turn off the television, his face a strange mix of surprise and joy. Savannah? Why? Why so suddenly? Mom, will you be okay going by yourself? Maybe I can take a weekend off to take you there? He said in a rush, trying hard to play the part of a dutiful son, but Jessica didn't have that much patience. She shot up from the sofa and came to my side, her voice as sweet as honey, as if I were her own mother. Oh, you worry too much. It's a good thing for Mom to go visit a friend and get a change of scenery. It gets so boring staying at home all the time. She turned to me, feigning affection as she took my arm. Mom, you should go. A change of environment will do you good. Your old friend must miss you. How long are you planning to stay? Have you bought your tickets yet? I've booked my flight. It's for 10 o'clock tonight, I said, gently pulling my arm from her grasp. Tonight? They exclaimed in unison, the joy in their voices almost impossible to contain. So soon? Happiness had come too suddenly. Yes, I wanted to leave as soon as possible. Well, that's great. That's wonderful. Jessica clapped her hands, her face beaming with the kind of joy a child has when receiving a gift. Let me call you a cab to the airport. You sit down and rest for a bit. Don't tire yourself out. She bustled off to get her phone, chattering nonstop. Mom, you have to take care of yourself while you're away. Call us to let us know you've arrived safely. Oh, and eat whatever you want in Savannah. Don't be too frugal. Her hypocrisy had reached its peak. I just watched this clumsy performance in silence. A moment later, she came back with her purse. She opened it and pulled out a few crumpled bills. I glanced at them, a total of $500. For a trip of a while in a city as expensive as Savannah, she was giving me $500. She pressed the cash into my hand, her tone like a mistress bestowing a gift upon a servant. Mom, take this for pocket money. Buy a bottle of water or a snack on the way. Now don't refuse. It's a little something from the two of us. I held the bills in my hand. They were thin and wrinkled, just like the fake affection they were trying so hard to display. For a split second, I wanted to throw the money back in her face and laugh out loud. But no. I had to see the play through to the very end. I nodded slightly and put the money in my pocket. Thank you. Of course, it's our pleasure, Jessica said, her smile stretching from ear to ear. Then, she said the words I had been waiting for all these days, the words that revealed all their hopes. Mom, have a wonderful time. Stay there as long as you want. Don't be in a hurry to come back. We've got everything handled here. Stay as long as you want. That's right. I will stay there for a long time. A very long time. So long that you will never have the chance to see me again. The taxi arrived quickly. Daniel helped me carry the small suitcase to the door. He was still trying to put on a sad face. Mom, the house will feel so empty with you gone. I didn't answer. Standing at the doorway, I looked back one last time into the house. The warm yellow light shone on the sofa, the television, the dining table, everything was so familiar. But strangely, I didn't feel a single pang of nostalgia. The pain of betrayal had burned away all my memories and feelings for this place. It was no longer my home, just an empty shell. I looked at my son and daughter-in-law. They stood there, waving, their faces plastered with incredibly fake farewell smiles. They were sending off a burden, an obstacle in their lives. They were eagerly anticipating a new life, a new future in the house they thought was already theirs. I'm leaving now, I said flatly, my final words. Okay, Mom. Travel safe. Remember to call when you get there. I turned, got into the car, and it pulled away, leaving the house and the two people drunk on their victory behind me. I didn't look back. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the silhouette of the house grow smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared around a corner. A chapter of my life had officially closed. I didn't know what the future in Savannah held, but I was certain of one thing. I was free. When the red-eye flight landed at Savannah, divided by Hilton Head International Airport, The city was still asleep. I didn't linger, instead taking the first shuttle into the city proper. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the thin mist, casting a golden glow on the old cobblestone squares and quiet, moss-draped oaks, I knew I had come to the right place. The air here was fresh and sweet, with the faint scent of flowers, a world away from the suffocating air of Chicago, which was thick with exhaust and hypocrisy. I never called Susan, my old college friend I had used as an excuse. That lie was just a part of my play, and now the play was over. I was a free audience member, here to start a completely new life, a life not written in anyone else's script. Through a local real estate agent, I quickly found what I was looking for. It wasn't a luxurious villa, but a small, exquisite condo in a quiet, historic district, with a balcony overlooking Forsyth Park. From here, I could watch the colors of the park change throughout the day, from the vibrant green of dawn to the deep indigo of dusk, and the twinkling lights at night. It cost a significant portion of the money from the sale of the house, but I didn't hesitate. This was an investment in the rest of my life, an investment in peace. The next few days were busy, yet filled with a joy I had never known before. For the first time in my life, I was making all the decisions for my own living space. I didn't buy the kind of expensive furniture from my old house. Instead, I chose an elegant sofa and a delicate glass coffee table. I personally picked out every curtain, every set of bed linens, every bowl, and every pair of chopsticks. Every single item in this home was chosen by me, bearing my own taste and my own mark. I spent an afternoon at a local nursery and came back with all sorts of flowers I loved. The small balcony soon became a colorful little garden. Every morning, the first thing I did was no longer rushing to the kitchen to cook for others, but walking out onto my balcony, brewing a pot of jasmine tea, and watering each of my plants while I sipped it. I breathed in the fresh air, gazed at the serene park, and felt an absolute freedom seeping into every cell of my body. There were no more nagging complaints about the food, no more contemptuous eye rolls, no more commanding tones or condescending attitudes, and no more feeling like I was an extra, a burden in my own home. Here, I was the master. I could cook whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Sometimes, for dinner, I would just have a single ear of corn and a glass of soy milk, then sit on the balcony and read until late at night. The silence wasn't scary. It was a companion, helping me wash away all the hurt and bitterness of the past. Gradually, I began to open up to the world around me. Most of my neighbors were retired, seniors, kind and warm-hearted. Mrs. Gable from upstairs taught me how to make proper shrimp and grits. Mr. Chen from across the hall was a chess master and would invite me down to the community garden for a few games every day. I also joined a local book club. In a space filled with the scent of old paper, I, along with a group of like-minded new friends, a group of elegant ladies, would discuss everything from classic literature to modern bestsellers. We didn't just talk about books. We shared stories about life, about our children, about joys and sorrows. For the first time in many, many years, I truly laughed out loud. It was a hearty, carefree laugh. I realized that happiness in one's later years isn't about being supported by your children in a big house. It's about finding inner peace and the joy discovered in ordinary things. I had sold a piece of material wealth, but what I gained was 1,000 times more precious: self-respect and the right to live the life I wanted. Exactly 2 weeks after I left, in that 3-story brownstone in Chicago's Lincoln Park, it was 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Daniel and Jessica were still curled up in their warm bed. The night before, Jessica's mother had called, saying she had settled everything back home and would be taking the bus to live with her daughter and son-in-law next week. The immense joy had sent them to sleep with satisfied smiles. They were dreaming of a wonderful future. This spacious house would be entirely theirs. A sweet and agreeable mother-in-law would replace that annoying mother-in-law. Life would be so free and comfortable. But their sweet dream was shattered by a series of harsh sounds. Bang, 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 bang. The knocking on the door was urgent and powerful, carrying an undeniable authority, as if someone was trying to break down the solid oak door. Jessica grumbled in annoyance, pulling the covers over her head. Who has such bad manners? It's Saturday morning, can't people just sleep in? Daniel also rolled over lazily. Probably the wrong door. Just ignore them. But the knocking didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent. Finally, Jessica couldn't take it anymore. She threw on a robe and stomped downstairs, furious. "Who is it? What's with all the banging?" "You sound like a debt collector," she yelled through the door. "We're from the law office, accompanying the new owner of this property. Please open the door and cooperate," a strange man's voice responded, cold and firm. Jessica froze. "New owner?" she muttered. "They must be crazy." Then she impatiently unlocked the door. Standing before her were three men, one well-dressed, middle-aged man who looked like a businessman, one in a security guard's uniform with a stern expression, and another in a suit holding a briefcase, who introduced himself as a lawyer. "Who are you? What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" Jessica asked, crossing her arms and tilting her chin up. The middle-aged man, the one who had bought my house, held out a folder of documents and said calmly, "Good morning. My name is Mr. Harrison, and I am the legal owner of this house. Here is the deed and the notarized contract of sale. We are here today to formally take possession of the property." Daniel, hearing the commotion, had ambled downstairs. Hearing Mr. Harrison's words, he laughed as if he'd heard the world's greatest joke. "What did you say? New owner? You must have made a mistake." He walked over to his wife. "This is my mom's house, which means it will be ours. Where did you get a bunch of fake documents and come here trying to run a scam?" The lawyer replied coldly, "Mr. Anderson, we don't have time for jokes. All of these documents are authentic, bearing legal seals and signatures. The previous owner of this property, Miss Carol Anderson, sold it to my client, Mr. Harrison, 2 weeks ago." The name Carol Anderson hit the couple like a thunderbolt. They stared at each other, the confidence on their faces instantly replaced by extreme panic. "Impossible!" Jessica shrieked, her voice piercing. "My mother-in-law went to Savannah to visit a friend. There's no way she would sell the house. You're all a bunch of con artists." "She went to Savannah?" the lawyer said with a disdainful smile. "Perhaps. But before she left, she finalized all the legal procedures. According to the terms of the contract, the seller must vacate the premises within 15 days of receiving full payment. Today is the 16th day. Therefore, we are requesting that you both clear out all your personal belongings and leave within 24 hours. 24 hours? Are you insane?" Daniel yelled, fear beginning to consume his reason. "I don't believe you. Let me see those papers." He snatched the folder from the lawyer's hand. His eyes frantically scanned every line, the property title transfer agreement, and his mother's handwriting, both firm and gentle. The signature he had seen thousands of times on report cards, permission slips, and birthday cards. There was no mistake. Whoosh! The document slipped from Daniel's trembling hands and scattered across the floor. His face was ashen, drained of all color. He staggered, having to lean against the wall to stay upright. He understood. He understood everything. His mother's terrifying calm, the sudden trip to Savannah, his wife's words, "Stay as long as you want." It was all an act. A perfect play directed by his mother, and he and his wife were nothing but two clueless puppets on a string. She hadn't accepted her fate at all. She had fought back. With a single devastating blow, she had struck down their greed and foolishness. "No, impossible. Mom," he muttered, completely broken. Seeing her husband's state, Jessica scrambled to pick up the documents. When she saw the signature, she too looked as if she had been struck by lightning. The dream of a comfortable life, the dream of bringing her own mother to live in luxury, it all popped like a soap bubble. She collapsed onto the floor in a heap and began to wail. The lawyer watched the scene, his face impassive. "We regret the circumstances, but the law is the law. In 24 hours, we will return with the police to enforce the eviction. We hope you will cooperate." With that, the three men turned and left, leaving behind a scene of devastation, and two people plunged into a chasm of despair. The door closed with a thud, shutting out all light and hope. Daniel, trembling, pulled out his phone and dialed my number. But all he heard was silence. 24 hours is far too short a time to accept a cruel reality and pack up a lifetime of belongings. For Daniel and Jessica, it was 24 hours of hell on earth. They scrambled around like headless chickens. The sounds of crying, shouting, and things being carelessly thrown about echoed through the house that was no longer theirs. Jessica packed clothes into a suitcase, weeping and cursing under her breath. Oh my God, that old hag, that vicious old woman. How could she do this to us? She's crazy. She's completely lost her mind. Daniel didn't even have the strength to curse. He sat slumped on the floor, his head in his hands, his mind a complete blank. The next morning at 9 o'clock sharp, Mr. Harrison and the lawyer returned, this time with 2 police officers. They didn't say much, just coldly instructed the couple to leave. Any resistance would be met with force. Literally kicked out of their home, Daniel and Jessica stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by a mountain of suitcases, bags, and miscellaneous belongings. Curious neighbors gathered, pointing and whispering. The immense feeling of humiliation engulfed them. Jessica's mother, the one who was joyfully packing her bags back home, ready to come enjoy city life, received a tearful, incoherent phone call from her daughter. After hearing the news, she stood frozen. Her dream of a new life in the city turned to dust. Meanwhile, in Savannah, in the exquisite little condo overlooking the tranquil park, I was on my balcony, leisurely pruning a withered leaf from a pot of azaleas. The morning sun was gentle, the air crisp. I had just bought a new smartphone and a new SIM card. The old flip phone with the Chicago number was still there. I had kept it, not for communication, but for waiting. I knew this day would come sooner or later. The old phone, sitting on the glass coffee table, suddenly began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up, displaying the name Daniel, the name I had saved when he was still a college student. I let it ring. Once, twice, 10 times. The incessant buzzing was like a desperate cry from a distant world. I calmly finished trimming the last branch, dusted off my hands, and walked inside. I brewed a pot of green tea, its fragrance filling the air. When the phone rang for the 20th time, I slowly picked it up, took a deep breath, and pressed the answer button. On my end of the line, there was the serene aroma of tea and morning light. On his end, there was a hurricane. Hello? Mom? Is that you? Daniel's voice was a raw scream, completely distorted, mixed with the sound of wind and Jessica's crying in the background. I held the phone slightly away from my ear, waiting for the initial roar to pass before answering in a voice so calm it was chilling. It's me. My composure seemed to add fuel to his fire. He raged uncontrollably. What did you do? You sold the house? Are you insane? Why would you do that? Do you have any idea that we've been thrown out onto the street? A hailstorm of questions pelted down. I could picture his face, red and swollen with anger, streaked with tears and snot. I listened in silence, not interrupting, letting him vent all his rage, panic, and accusations. When he finally paused to gasp for breath, I began to speak slowly, each word clear and firm, like a final judgment. Daniel, are you finished? My calmness seemed to stun him. I continued, my voice still steady, without a trace of emotion. First, that house was built with a lifetime of hard work by your father and me. The deed has the name Carol Anderson on it. It was mine. I have the right to sell it, to gift it, or to do anything I want with it. I don't need to ask for anyone's permission, including yours. But that was my house. When you're gone, it was supposed to be mine, he countered weakly. I let out a soft laugh, a laugh as sharp as a razor blade. Yours? Who told you that? I never promised to give you that house. You and your wife arbitrarily granted yourselves that right. You assumed it was yours, and then, while I was still alive and well, you started planning how to take it over. I didn't. You didn't? I cut him off, my voice turning sharp. Then what was that plan to send your mother to an assisted living facility in the suburbs to make room for your mother-in-law? You thought your mother was old, senile, half-blind and deaf, and wouldn't know anything, right? You thought your mother would quietly obey your arrangements and just disappear from your lives, didn't you? The other end of the line went completely silent. He probably never imagined I knew everything. His silence was the most explicit confession of guilt. I took a sip of tea, the bitter taste spreading in my mouth, and continued. I gave you a chance. If you had talked to me honestly, maybe things would have been different. But you chose deception. You chose to scheme behind my back. You chose your mother-in-law and decided to throw your own mother away like an old piece of junk. Now, you ask me where you should live? I paused for a second, then delivered the final, cruel, and unshakable blow. Didn't you find a very nice assisted living facility for me? Well, now you can go find a place for yourselves. You wanted your own life. You didn't want to be burdened by this old woman. Fine, I've granted your wish. From now on, you can live your own lives. Mom, don't be like this. I'm begging you. His voice started to shift from a roar to a plea, but it was too late. My motherly love had died that night. I heard their whispers through the door. Don't call me again. Those were my last words. Without waiting for a reply, I decisively ended the call. Then, I opened my contacts, found the name Daniel, and selected block this caller. There. It was all truly over. I placed the old phone on the table. My world returned to its original peace. On the balcony, the sunlight was shining perfectly on the petals of a blooming hibiscus. The surface of the pond in Forsyth Park shimmered like a carpet of scattered silver. A brand new life was waiting for me. A life of peace, freedom, and a life that could never be harmed again. My life in Savannah flowed like a calm river. Every day was a gift, a new exploration. I learned the art of Southern cooking from Mrs. Gable and could now navigate the city's bus system on my own to visit its famous historic squares. I even bought a digital camera and started learning to photograph the flowers, the moss-covered cobblestones, and the simple, beautiful smiles of my elderly friends. My photo album grew thicker by the day, filled not with memories of the past, but with the vibrant joys of the present. I once thought that my story with Chicago, my story with my only son, had truly ended the day I blocked his number. I was wrong. Some people, when pushed to the brink, do not accept defeat gracefully. Instead, they become wounded animals, lashing out wildly to tear at whatever they perceive to be the source of their pain. It was a late autumn afternoon, with a slight chill in the air. I was in the kitchen, carefully following Mrs. Gable's recipe for shrimp and grits. The savory aroma filled my cozy condo. Suddenly, a thunderous banging at the door ripped through the peace. Bang, 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 bang. It was relentless, violent. It sounded like someone was trying to break the door down. My heart pounded. This wasn't just knocking, it was an assault. Through the peephole, I saw a sight that made my blood run cold. It was Daniel and Jessica. Their faces were twisted with rage and desperation. They must have driven all the way from Chicago. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open this door." Daniel's voice was a guttural roar, filled with a terrifying mix of fury and despair. "You old witch! You ruined our lives. You're going to pay for this." Jessica shrieked, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. She started kicking the door. My hands trembled, but the fear was quickly replaced by a cold, clear-headed resolve. I would not be their victim again. I backed away from the door, grabbed my new smartphone, and with steady fingers, I dialed 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" A calm voice answered. "Hello," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Carol Anderson. My son and daughter-in-law are trying to break down my door. They are screaming and making threats. I am afraid for my safety." I gave them my address. "Okay, ma'am. We're dispatching officers to you immediately. Please stay on the line with me. Find a safe place in your home, away from the door." I locked myself in the bedroom, the phone pressed to my ear. I could hear them still raging outside. "You can't hide forever," Daniel bellowed. The sound of something heavy hitting the door made me jump. My neighbors started yelling from their own apartments. "Hey, what's going on out there? We're calling the police." "You call whoever you want," Jessica screamed back. "This is a family matter." I stayed on the phone with the dispatcher, listening to the chaos outside. I did everything I was told. I stayed silent. I waited. This wasn't my fight to have. I had made my choice, and now, the consequences were playing out. I had built a wall of peace around my new life, and I would not let them tear it down. I hung up the phone and placed it on the table. I had done what needed to be done. Now, all I had to do was wait. I calmly walked to the teapot and poured myself another cup of hot tea. Outside, the door was hell, but inside was the absolute peace I had created with my own hands. The Savannah police were efficient. In less than 10 minutes, the sound of sirens grew from a distant wail to a piercing shriek right outside. The shouting and banging at my door stopped abruptly. I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway and the authoritative voice of a police officer. "Don't move. Who gave you permission to disturb the peace here?" I went to the peephole to observe. 2 young, tall, and well-built police officers had Daniel and Jessica under control. My son's face was pale, and he stood as stiff as a board. Jessica was still trying to struggle, muttering curses under her breath. One of the officers knocked gently on my door. "Ma'am, police, are you safe? Can you open the door?" Only then did I calmly unlock the door. I stepped outside to face it all. More neighbors had gathered, each looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. I looked directly at the 2 officers and gave a slight nod. "Officers, hello. Thank you for arriving so quickly." I was the one who called. "Are you Miss Carol Anderson?" "Yes, I am." The officer turned to the now quiet Daniel and Jessica. "And who are these 2 to you?" Before I could answer, Daniel looked up, his eyes a complex mix of resentment and a sliver of pleading. "Officer, this is my mother. We just wanted to talk to our mom." I gave a faint smile. "Officer, yes, this is my son, but I do not want to talk to him. They drove here from Chicago, tried to break down my door, screamed at me, cursed at me, and threatened me. All of my neighbors here can attest to that." The surrounding neighbors immediately nodded in confirmation. Mrs. Gable from upstairs even said loudly, "That's right, officer. They've been causing a ruckus for a while now. That woman even said she was going to kill Mrs. Anderson. She was terrifying." Hearing this, the 2 officers' expressions turned stern. They turned to Daniel and Jessica. "We're going to need to see your IDs. We need to take a report regarding your disturbance of the peace and criminal threats." Only then did Jessica seem to understand the gravity of the situation. The color drained from her face. Daniel hung his head low, not daring to look at anyone. They sheepishly took out their IDs and handed them to the police. After taking their statements, the older of the 2 officers spoke to them in a severe tone. "Listen, this condominium is Miss Anderson's private property. She has the right to decide who she does and does not see. Your actions have broken the law. This time, we are issuing a formal warning. But if there is a next time, if you ever come near this area again, we will arrest you and you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Is that clear?" "Yes, clear," Daniel answered in a small voice. "Good. Now leave. Immediately." Under the watchful eyes of the police and dozens of neighbors, Daniel and Jessica, like 2 drowned rats, meekly picked up their few pathetic bags and walked toward the elevator. They didn't dare look back at me. This humiliation was perhaps even more painful for them than losing the house. The police stayed for a few more minutes to ask me some questions, instructed me to call immediately if anything else happened, and then they left. The neighbors gradually dispersed, and the hallway returned to its quiet state. I stood in my doorway and took a deep breath. It was all, truly, over. I turned to go back inside, then paused and walked to the balcony. From my high vantage point, I saw the figures of my son and daughter-in-law. They exited the building, looking so small and pitiful. They hesitated on the sidewalk for a moment, as if unsure where to go. Finally, supporting each other, they staggered toward the bus stop, their stooped silhouettes stretching long in the setting sunday. I stood there, watching quietly, until their figures completely disappeared. I didn't cry, not a single tear. I felt no victor's glee, nor the pain of a mother who had lost her son. There was only a strange sense of peace. The mother-son relationship between us was likely over. The bond of blood may be impossible to sever, but the bond of love and respect had been burned to ashes by their own hands. I had lost a son I once considered my entire life. But in exchange, I had regained my dignity, my freedom, and my own whole life. The bond of mother and child may be dead, but for Carol Anderson, the peace of her golden years was just beginning. Thank you for watching. I hope today's story has resonated with you in some way. For those of you who haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the subscribe button so we can accompany you every day. Let's grow together. We'll see you in the next one.